Have you ever heard the saying, it's an acquired taste? You've heard that? It's a weird one, right? That's usually describing something that people eat that doesn't taste good. I don't know if you could probably think of some examples. Maybe you can think of something, a taste that you have acquired. I know many people say coffee is an example of that. And one of the many ways I'm a little different is that I've loved coffee from the time I was a fetus, basically. I came pre-installed with that taste. But I do have an example of this in my own life. See, currently, I love pumpkin pie. I know you wouldn't tell by looking at me, but I do enjoy at least some pumpkin pie. But you know what? It wasn't always this way. It was not. See, I've always loved pie, especially apple pie. Apples are good, pie is good, this works. Pumpkins are barely a food, right? They're pretty to look at in the field, but like you cut one open, it's like, what have I done? What is this? Is this what I eat? No. Like the box that it comes in. It's like, who thought of eating this? How hungry were you? Right? And not only that, but someone decided, you know what? This would make a good dessert. We should save this for after because, so good, right? But here we are. As a kid, I'm like, that's gross. Why would anyone do that? But my father ate pumpkin pie. Thanksgiving, Christmas, the traditional times it would come out. My father ate pumpkin pie. Other adults did too. So as a kid, I kind of thought this is one of those things. Eventually, when I'm a grown-up, when I'm a dad, I'm going to have to eat pumpkin pie. I was apprehensive. I'm like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I can get there. But I reached a point where I'm like, I'd better start training now because it'll be really embarrassing if I show up and I'm at the grown-ups table at Thanksgiving and I can't eat pumpkin pie. I was ahead of the curve on coffee, but you know what? No one's perfect. So I actually started, believe it or not, I forced myself to eat it. A small piece. What would you like? I'll have a little piece of pumpkin. Really, Jace? You don't? Yeah, no, I'm working on it, right? Yeah, no, it's good. And oh yeah, so awesome. More whipped cream, please, right? I remember one Thanksgiving, my one aunt commented. It's like she's looking at me like, "Are you okay? Do you even like that?" And I'm like, "I'm working on it. Like I've got to get there eventually." And she's like, "Don't hurt yourself. Like, I love pumpkin pie. Don't waste. Why are you giving pie to the kid that doesn't like pie, right?" But you know what? I did it. There's so many things in my life that I've started and I've just not been able to persevere and finish. But this one is a victory I can own. I got there. I actually acquired the taste for it. Over a couple of years of hard work, I found that I actually really did. It's like, really? Do you want apple? No, I'll have pumpkin. Really? It's like, yeah. And so now I enjoy it. Now, looking back, I question the wisdom of this endeavor. There's probably better things that I could have invested in. But some tastes can, and maybe must be, acquired over time. That means there's got to be a motive, right? Like the whole reason you say that, it's like, if someone says, oh, it's an acquired taste. Oh, so you acquired this taste? Yes, I did. That means I started eating this when I didn't like it, but I kept eating it to then I could tolerate it, and then I came to enjoy it. It's like, why would you do that? There's got to be another motive beyond it tastes good, right? And there are. Maybe it's something that's healthy, right? Kale, I understand, is an acquired taste. It's on my list. Maybe it's what the people I wish to emulate eat, right? My dad eats pumpkin pie. I'm going to eat pumpkin pie. Like, that's what, aim high, man. That's such a success story. Maybe it's all I have, so I have to, or it's a healthy thing, or the doctor says I need to eat more of this, so I guess I'm just going to, right? There has to be a reason because the thing itself does not attract us. Humility is an acquired taste. Humility is an acquired taste. I'm going to go out on a limb. I try to avoid extremes, but I venture to say that no one likes humility naturally. We like it in other people. We appreciate it when other people are humble, right? They're not too full of themselves. They don't, assume it's all about them because it's clearly not, right? It's all about me. But humility in ourselves is hard. if we've not learned to appreciate or at least tolerate the taste of it, it tastes awful. We have a phrase for it, eating crow, right? When you have to eat crow, figuratively, it's like, oh, you got a heaping helping of humility and you weren't prepared for it. I've never eaten an actual crow, but I see what they eat and I can imagine that is not a tasty. If you've actually eaten crow, I would love to chat with you, but you know what I mean. But sooner or later, our circumstances will require humility of us, right? It's coming. Eventually, we're going to grow up to the point God in his grace will make sure of it. We come to a place where humility is required of us, and we can either work into it and accept it ourselves, or we can find it sort of plunked down on the plate in front of us. Crow. In the story of Esther that we've been looking at, we met a man named Haman, and he has been promoted to a high position in the kingdom of Persia, and he is, to put it mildly, not a humble man. He has a lot of reasons to not be humble, right? He is a big shot. And we read how when a man named Mordecai refused to bow before Haman as he walked by, Haman was angry, and he was determined to not just punish Mordecai, not just kill Mordecai, but kill and destroy his entire people, the Jews. The queen of Persia at the time, Esther, was actually raised by Mordecai, and she herself is a Jew, although they didn't know it. And last week we read how Mordecai urged Esther to use her influence with the king to put a stop to Haman's evil plan, even though approaching the king without an invitation was a capital offense in Persia, even for the queen. What is she going to do? We jump in this week. We're going to be looking at Esther, basically all of chapter 5 and all of chapter 6. And it moves pretty quick, but I want us to keep in mind, among the other things moving around in this story, because there's courage, there's obedience, there's God's divine hand of providence at work behind the scenes. But the humility, the necessity of humility and what happens when it's not there, I think it is huge in this story. So first, I want us to look at chapter 5, verses 1 to 8. As I said when we left off last week, Mordecai has talked to Esther and says, you've got to do something to save us. Haman has put this plan in place. We're all doomed. And she goes, okay, I'll do it. It says, on the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace in front of the king's quarters, while the king was sitting on his royal throne inside the throne room, opposite the entrance to the palace. And when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, she won favor in his sight, and he held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Then Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter, and the king said to her, what is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you, even up to half of my kingdom. And Esther said, if it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to a feast that I have prepared for the king. Then the king said, bring Haman quickly, that we may do as Esther has asked. So the king and Haman came to the feast that Esther had prepared. And as they were drinking wine after the feast, the king said to Esther, what is your wish? It shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even to half of my kingdom it shall be fulfilled. And then Esther answered, my wish and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my wish and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come to the feast that I will prepare for them tomorrow, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said. So I want to pause there, and we look at Esther's brave plan, which, if we've not read this before, and this is as far as you've got, it's like, is she brave or is she waffling a little bit here? We see that she, when we just read, okay, so she put on her royal robe, she got dressed up, and she went and stood. I don't know what the layout of the palace is like, but there's an outer court and there's a throne room. And so she didn't walk right up and sit beside him. Hey, buddy, how's it going? It's me, right? But she comes and she's standing there. He sees her, and what is strongly implied from what we read in the previous chapter is that her doing that was basically signing her own death warrant. the king could, and it seems that he had. Because she didn't just say to Mordecai, technically the rule is that I could get killed for that. But it never happens. It'll be fun. Like, she was afraid. Apparently, the king was the kind of guy, he's sitting there on his throne. I don't know who's around him. I don't know what he's doing. I picture that he's reading. Because to me, reading a book is the natural human sign for leave me alone. But other people don't get that, right? They come up and talk to you while you're reading, and it's like, and he's just like, what, why are you bugging me? Maybe apparently other people in my family think that this is irrational, but I'm working on it. I need more pie. But apparently the king would see someone and be like, how dare you come and stand there as though you want, off with his head, and it would happen. So Queen Esther is like, you better believe when she put on her royal robes, right? You're looking your very best because you want to win his favor, and if not, you want to look nice in the casket, I suppose. So she's there, but she wins his favor, and we don't know what the odds are. Her conversation with Mordecai that we read in chapter 4, she wasn't sure, right? She's like, it's been like a month since the king has requested my presence. She hadn't seen him. But we see that she gains his favor, so she's made a plan. And this is the first step. Get in there and don't die. That, I think, is a great way for most plans to start. Then she's there, and she invites him to a banquet. Because he asks her right off the bat, what would you like? Up to half my kingdom. Very likely that is a bit of hyperbolic speech, common to the ancient Near East and the way a king would speak if he's being benevolent. If she said, really? Okay, let's get out a map and divvy this up, right? Let's split the assets 50-50. I think he would have been like, I rescind my golden scepter, off with her head, right? But he's generous. He's like, what would you like? I'll give you what you like. And instead of her going, okay, well, here's my concern, right? She says, come to a party that I've prepared. And so they come. There is a patience in her plans. There's a wisdom here, right? She is working a process. She understands that there is a timing to things that is important because she gets one shot at this, right? If this goes poorly, she probably doesn't get a do-over. She's had 3 days of fasting and planning to figure, it's like, by the time this plan is done, she's dead or Haman's dead. But like somebody's not walking away from this. What is she going to do? So she understands the timing. Maybe she's buttering up the king. Maybe she's showing honor. Maybe she's trying to feel out his likely response to increase her chances. Quite significantly, she invites Haman as well. Now, Haman is like second in command in the whole kingdom, so that's not random. It's not like, Your Highness, come to this party, and that guy that washes the windows, why don't you come too, right? Like, it's not weird that she would invite Haman. It's an honor for him. And so then, they're at the party, and they've had some good food and something to drink, and the king seems even more generous. It's like, now's your time, Esther. She's going to do it. And she's like, if I found favor, if you're going to grant my request, what my request is, let's do the same thing tomorrow. This was fun, right? For some of us, we're like, oh, lady, get to the point. But she understands the timing. There's a wisdom to this, and of course, great courage. It would have been maybe easier to just rip the Band-Aid. Let's just get this out in the open. I have to try and sleep tonight and do this again tomorrow. The fate of me and my whole people are riding on this plan. Is it going to work? But she proceeds. So then we jump into chapter 5, continue with verses 9 to 14. And we read a little bit about what happened right after that party. It says, And Haman went out that day joyful and glad of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, and he neither rose nor trembled before him, he was filled with wrath against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home. And he sent and brought his friends and his wife Zeresh. And Haman recounted to them the splendor of his riches and the number of his sons and all the promotions which the king had honored him, and how he had advanced him above all the officials and servants of the king. And then Haman said, Even Queen Esther, let no one but me come with the king to the feast she prepared. And tomorrow also I am invited by her together with the king. Yet all of this is worth nothing to me so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Let a gallows 50 cubits high be made, and in the morning tell the king to have Mordecai hanged upon it, and then go joyfully with the king to the feast." This idea pleased Haman, and he had the gallows made. Haman is not a humble man, but I suggest there seems to be some insecurity here, right? Haman has the world by the tail. He went out joyful, glad of heart. He calls his friends and his wife, and he brags about all of the great things. But he's not making stuff up. I have this many sons and this much wealth, and I'm like a big shot, and I don't know if they're all like, you are the man. But he's like, I have all of this, but I'm not happy. None of this matters at all because there's one guy, there's this one little thing that I can't have, and I don't feel like it just stole all of the glory from that, right? What am I going to do? It almost sounds pouty, right? I even got to go to Esther's party, but Mordecai won't bow to me, right? Zeresh, there. Let's solve this problem. You're a big shot, right? So just have the guy eliminated. But not just have him eliminated. She's like, make a gallows 50 cubits high. A cubit is about like this. So this is extraordinarily high. Now they use the word gallows. That's what is the translation for it. As I mentioned before, in Persia, as near as we can tell from other historical sources, it wasn't so much like hangman. It was more like a big skewer, like a shish kebab. And it's I guess you yeet the guy up there or have a ladder, right? So it's have this guy publicly executed in a humiliating way, but go over the top, make such an example of this guy, basically to show everyone around, see, this is what happens to the people who don't honor Mordecai or don't honor Haman. I'm that big of a deal that the guys who won't, see him up there, that's what happens. And his wife suggests this. I feel like there's so much to unpack in this family dynamics here when the husband pouts and the wife is like, just murder him in an extraordinary fashion. And he's like, right, that's good. All right, I feel better. Okay, so go and get the big gallows made. But that's what he did. That was his big plan. Okay, it'll be all right. Then the story switches slightly. And we read about what the king, something that's going on with the king. And this is another one of those coincidences in the story. We read in chapter 6, verses 1 to 5. It says, that night the king could not sleep, and he gave orders to bring the book of memorable deeds, the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written how Mordecai had told about Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the threshold and who had sought to lay hands on King Xerxes. And the king said, what honor or distinction has been bestowed on Mordecai for this? The king's young men who attended him said, nothing has been done for him. The king said, who is in the court? Now, Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to speak to the king about having Mordecai hanged on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's young men told him, Haman is there, standing in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So this is a little bit weird, right? Any great story, right? It cuts from here to here. Here's what Esther's doing. And then meanwhile, back at the ranch, right? They're building, what's with the big stick? Well, I've got a big plan. And then meanwhile, the king, he can't sleep. So we don't know exactly the hour of day, but this is likely either late at night or very, very early in the morning. The king can't sleep. And it doesn't tell us why he can't sleep. But it says that he can't and that he chose to do something to help him sleep. He does what I do. He pulled out the minutes of his last meeting, and it's I'll read those. That'll knock me right out. This book that he's reading, the book of memorable deeds, the Chronicles, the name of that gets translated differently depending on the translation you're reading. It's basically just the records of the things that happened that day. kind of the official court diary. Very likely, like there'd be volumes and volumes of this. And it doesn't seem like the king said, read to me about what happened on such and such a date. It sounds like he's like, just read it to me. So they're like, just flip, and they start reading at this random spot. Some commentators suggest, and again, it's just speculation, but it's like maybe if the king he couldn't sleep and he was feeling worried, like I've missed something. So just read it over in case there's something that I've missed, there's a detail. I don't know if I don't get the sense from this story that Xerxes is like an administrative, like dot your T's and cross your I's kind of guy, but maybe it's more review the records of how awesome I am. That always makes me feel better so I can sleep. We don't know. But in the midst of all of this reading, he's reminded of how he was very nearly assassinated by a couple of his inner security team, only for their plot to have been uncovered by this servant named Mordecai. He's like, oh yeah, no, I remember that, right? And the reader seems to skip the part that records what Xerxes did to this, to reward this loyal subject. He's like, wait, back up. What did I do to honor him? This is something in the ancient Near East that, like, it was seen as a point of honor. A king is glorious and honorable. One of the ways he flexes that is the way that he quickly and lavishly rewards those who do good with him, right? He wants it very clearly seen. If you wrong me, bad things happen to you swiftly. But if you are loyal to me, that pays off. And whoever's reading, right? I'm imagining this cat's tired too, right? He's been woken up. I'm tired. Come read to me. It's like, wait, it is 3 a.m. Like, yes, sire. Right? What did I do to him? What was his reward after he saved my life? And he's like, yeah, it doesn't say anything. It just moves on to the next day. Didn't do anything. No record of him being honored, Your Highness. Oh, maybe that's what I was forgetting. Maybe that's why I couldn't sleep. I can't let a debt like that remain unpaid. That's a mark against my honor. I got to do something. What should I do for this Mordecai? What could capture my gratitude for such loyalty and also make up for like not doing it right away and so much time has passed? What should I do? I should ask someone. And then the servant's like, Your Highness, Haman has just entered the court. Like, it's the middle of the night. Meanwhile, Haman is so excited about his plan. Okay, I've got this gallows built. Maybe it finished late. And he's like, I'm going to go and ask the king right now just to make sure this gets done. Zeresh is like, he's probably asleep. The king is up at all kinds of weird hours. It's fine. It'll be fine. I'm just going to go over. Maybe he's awake. So he's going in with his big plan, right? King, they're told, hey, Haman's out there in the court. King's like, come on in. He is great with plans. He is just the guy I've got to ask. So then we see in this next section in chapter 6, verses 6 to 11 about Mordecai's big day. It says, so Haman came in, and the king said to him, Haman, what should be done to the man whom the king delights to honor? And Haman said to himself, who would the king delight to honor more than me? So Haman said to the king, for the man whom the king delights to honor, let royal robes be brought, which the king has worn, and a horse that the king has ridden, and on whose head a royal crown is set. And let the robes and the horse be handed over to one of the king's most noble officials, and let them dress the man whom the king delights to honor, and let them lead him on the king's horse through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. The king said, Haman, hurry, take the robes and the horse as you have said, and do so to Mordecai the Jew who sits at the king's gate. Leave out nothing that you have mentioned. So Haman took the robes and the horse, and he dressed Mordecai and led him through the square of the city, proclaiming before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. This did not go, he saw that going differently in his mind, I think. Haman had his big day all planned out, right? He's built this gallows. He didn't build it. He ordered it built, right? And he's going to go see the king first thing. to get permission to hang Mordecai, right? Then he would have all day to enjoy getting his revenge, and he would have time to get changed and dressed and go to the party that he was invited to later that day, right? It's gonna be great. He could go to part 2 of Queen Esther's banquet, which he would be able to enjoy more fully, knowing that Mordecai was, he was dead. He'd fully dealt with Mordecai. And so we have here just like a bit of comedy, right? Based on incorrect assumptions. And we get this irony that's just like, it's thick as a Persian rug here, right? Instead of Mordecai paying honor to Haman, because that's what Haman wanted, right? Mordecai wouldn't bow to him when he came by and he's all upset. He should be paying honor to me if he doesn't, right? Now we get Haman paying honor to Mordecai instead. And instead of the king allowing Mordecai to fall victim to Haman's plot, right? Haman had big plans for Mordecai, tall, pointy plans for him. The king instead reverses his whole expectation and commands that Mordecai receive the benefits of Haman's elaborate plan to honor and glorify himself, right? Haman cooked up the plan. Some commentators I have read pointed out the significance of what Haman had suggested. It didn't say, well, if the king wants to, the man that the king delights to honor, let the king give him a whole bunch of gold and riches, right? That would make sense for most people, but Haman himself was already stinking rich. What he wanted was prestige. Like a game-worn jersey, right? I want the king's robe that he has worn, and the king's horse. Like these are things that you're not allowed to touch if you're normal people. But like he's just thinking, what don't I have? What do you get for the guy who has everything? What would glorify me even more, right? It's entirely about prestige. And the king's like, brilliant. Haman, you are so good with plans. That is it's better than I could come up with. Great, so let's do it. And Haman's like, yes. And he's like, so get the robe, get the horse, and your mission is Mordecai. Do it to him, right? And it's just like, you can just hear the jaw hit the what? And his words are not recorded, right? He doesn't seem to argue. I would not have wanted to be any of the other servants, right? You're the king's horse dude in the stable, brushing the king's horse. He's all ready. The door gets kicked open and in comes Haman, right? A dangerous guy. Oh, my lord, what would you like? Psh, get out of my way. Get the dumb horse. I doubt he was being gracious at all. He was not happy. He's doing it, right? He's not liking it. Mordecai's words are not recorded here. But I can only imagine what his day's like. He shows up for work. Here comes Haman. Oh, here we go again. Haman's like, Mordecai, we need to talk. I guess this is it, right? Here, what's all this? Haman, I didn't know you cared, right? Like, how do you not rub it in? Like, that would be, right? It's not recorded, but Mordecai is honored in an over-the-top, unexpectedly extravagant way. For Haman to lead a guy through the city on the king's horse with the king's robe proclaiming, it's like, who's better than Haman? Apparently this guy, what's his name again? Mordecai? Wow, he must be a really great guy if Haman thinks he's so awesome, right? Big day for Mordecai. Not a great day for Haman. And a passage that just comes to mind so clearly here is that it's a well-known verse, Proverbs 16:18. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall, right? Haman had a lot of pride, and he's been taken down a peg. He is like, crow. Oh, 2 helpings, thank you. That's great. And it's cold too. I like it that way. It's better when it's been sitting out for a bit. Oh, great, right? So what does he do? In chapter 6, verse 12 to 14, we read that, hold on, where am I? That goes down here. It says, then Mordecai returned to the king's gate. He just goes back to work. That was fun. We should do this again sometime. Right? But Haman hurried to his house, mourning and with his head covered. And Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him. And then his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of the Jewish people, you will not overcome him, but will surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried to bring Haman to the feast that Esther had prepared. So Haman doesn't protest, right? He does the thing, but he goes home, and this is like his worst day ever. And apparently he's what do they call it? He's a verbal processor, right? He just calls everyone over. You're not going to believe what happened. It's like, oh, dude, we saw. Like, I was at work, and what's all the hubbub? And it's like, is that Haman leading the horse? And oh, my word. Like, right? They're like, yeah, dude, how you doing? Oh, it's awful. And there's this amazing turn, right, in the advice that he gets. He laments. It didn't go at all how he wanted. His wife's response, of course, is far less encouraging this time. Like, I think you're doomed. I don't think you can win this. It's like, you just told me to build the big stick. Like, whose side are you on? There's no source or reason cited for her prophetic statement, but she seems to very clearly see the turn that things are taking. And it's like, maybe she's going like, hold on. So when you rushed out last night and I said you shouldn't go and talk to the king right now, and you said it'll be fine, you're saying that didn't work out? I don't want to say I told you so, but she's like, hold on. So then when you arrived, he did like, that's too much coincidence. Like, there's something bigger at play here, my guy. I don't like your chances. And she drops this like almost prophetic, like, you are not going to win. If Mordecai, before whom your downfall has already begun, right? It's like, well, aren't we in the same boat? It's almost like she's like, I'm not with him. Like, you seem to be in a bad way. And before he can even say anything or protest or whatever, knock, knock, knock. Haman, you're being summoned. We have to come to the party. What? Yeah, right. So it's this huge honor. The royal limo has showed up to take him to the palace. You're the only other guest at Esther Part 2, The Revenge, this great banquet, right? And it's this great honor, and he can't enjoy that. He was just utterly humiliated. And then his wife and friends are like, yeah, good luck, buddy, right? Whoa. And he's off to the party, not in a great party mood. It's a turn of events that he did not see coming. I want to conclude with a passage from Luke that I think has some parallel to this. In Luke chapter 14, verses 7 to 11. In Luke 14, it says Jesus was invited to a fancy party at the home of a leader of the Pharisees. This was kind of a big deal. And he accepted the invitation. And I think it would have been maybe some of his friends would have been like, I don't think that's wise. And he's like, it'll be okay. And we read in verses 7 to 11, it says, now he told a parable to those who were invited when he noticed how they chose the places of honor, saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you is also invited. And he who invited you both will come to you and say, give your place to this person, and then you will begin with shame to go and take the lowest place. But when you arrive, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes by, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Humility is an acquired taste. You can avoid it. You can be like, if it tastes bad, why would I eat it? You're a fool to keep cramming pumpkin pie down your gullet when you don't even like it. Why would I pursue humility? Why would I pursue seeing myself as less awesome and putting other people ahead, letting them take the credit? Why would I do that? That feels really not great. And Jesus points out the wisdom of it. Because your circumstances are you're never going to be the best every time. And if you go in acting like you are, eventually reality is going to come along, and he says humility is an acquired taste. If you've got to eat it all of a sudden and you haven't worked up to it, it's a lot, right? And he uses this example. We have a little bit of information without jumping into the context, but at feasts like this, and like in a lot of times in places, there was like more prestigious and less prestigious, right? Like think of a wedding reception. There's the head table that the wedding party sits at, right? Then there's everyone else. But imagine if there was like a pecking order, the seats, the people closest to are more important. It was that kind of idea. He's like, yeah, I get it. Human nature when you come is to like, I want the best seat. How close can I get? That seat's empty. I'm just going to sit there. And he points out just the practicality, right? He's not even being overtly moralistic with them. He doesn't say, well, that's wrong. It's like, just practically. Like if you are concerned for your own reputation, you would be better off sitting in the cheap seats. Worst case scenario, nothing gets said and you sit in the cheap seats because that was where you were supposed to be. Oh, that's humbling, but you get to process that on your own. But if you take the best seat and your spot was somewhere else, and in front of everyone, the host has to come and be like, actually, right? What should be done for the man whom the king delights to honor? Oh, he should get the best seat. Surely he's talking about me. That great. So what I want you to do is go and get that guy and do that for him, and you can sit. Right? That's harder. That's so much harder. Pride is death for humans. The Bible is clear on that. But there's some practical advice that humility is something we can practice. We can make choices that practice humility and let us sort of acquire the taste for it, that we would not have to be humbled. It says God exalts the humble, but he opposes the proud. He opposes the proud because we're confused. We are insane to think that we are better than we are. God in his grace will put us in our place, but we are wise if we can walk in humility ahead of time. Haman is starting to learn that, and next week we will see exactly what the rest of that lesson looked like. Let me pray for us. Gracious Lord, we thank you for your love for us. We thank you for the wisdom that is in your word. And Lord, I pray honestly for myself and all of us here and who are listening, that you would help us walk in humility. It is not something that's easy for us. And maybe like Haman, at the bottom of it is an insecurity. We are worried that if we don't try to push ourselves ahead and make sure everyone knows how awesome we are, maybe we won't be loved, maybe we won't be accepted, maybe we will be worthless. We thank you that as we read your word, we see the truth that you have created us in your image and you love us because you love us. I pray that you would help us increasingly rest secure in your love for us, that we would be less addicted or drawn to getting acceptance from everyone else. I pray that you would help us to grow in your grace and in humility, that we would happily put other people forward, not feeling threatened, but confident in your love for us and your acceptance of us because of your grace. We can't do this on our own. On our own, we are like Haman. But Lord, I pray that you would work in our spirits to make us wise. In Jesus' name, amen.